central aisles. That's a safety issue. But you're very welcome to come and sit down on the lawn at the very front of the stage here. There's space if you'd like to come and sit on the lawn. And just before we go on with the next session, which is a book launch, I will quickly announce our next Zomato hot seat winner. So if you are in a seat, you might like to check the back of your chair. If you find a big red sticker there from Zomato, one of our festival sponsors for this year, it means you are the winner of a prize. Do we have a winner? Does anybody have a large red sticker on the back of their seat? Ah, congratulations. One of our volunteers will give you a bag, a prize giveaway. Once again, please do come down and take a seat at the front if you're in the central aisles. We will need to clear those before we can commence the session. And just while you're settling down, an announcement. We are driving a user-generated content campaign in which we're asking guests at the festival to post your favorite spot at this very beautiful venue, Diggy Palace, using hashtag MyDiggyCorner at JLF. That's hashtag MyDiggyCorner at JLF and tagging at Jaipur Lit Fest. So if you post your favorite part of the venue, our team will retweet the good posts and the best ones will be selected to win prizes of signed books. Those books will be announced, or the winners rather, on the 28th of January on the Jaipur Lit Fest social media handles. I'll ask you to move quickly, please, so that we can actually start the session. Please do come and sit down the front. There's still space on the lawn. So the next session is the book launch of Plassey, The Battle That Changed the Course of Indian History. It's by Sudeep Chakravarti, and he will appear this afternoon in conversation with Namita Gokhale. Some information on the book. Impeccably researched and brilliantly told, Plassey is a story of politics, ambition, cowardice, greed, luck, bravery, and occasional flashes of brilliant battle strategy, and the best account yet of one of the turning points in Indian history. The author, Sudeep Chakravarti, is the author of several works of nonfiction, including the critically acclaimed and bestselling The Bengalis, A Portrait of a Community, and Clear.Hold.Build, which received the award for excellence at the Asian Publishing Awards in 2014. Also a novelist, Chakravarti is among India's leading independent columnists and commentators on matters of conflict and conflict resolution. He's appearing in conversation with Namita Gokhale, the award-winning author of 18 books, including 10 works of fiction. Her latest novel is Jaipur Journals, which is available here at the festival, and you may want to read it because it is set against the backdrop of the vivid Z Jaipur Literature Festival. That's Namita Gokhale's latest novel, Jaipur Journals. Of course, Namita is a founder and co-director of the festival. So without further ado, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Sudeep Chakravarti and Namita Gokhale.
Dear friends, some of you may be watching out for Mr. William Dalrymple, who's not here. Sadly, he's a bit not well. So Sudeep and we are asking Sanjoy to come on stage, are just going to unveil the book, and then we will have a brief conversation on a battle that changed the course of Indian history.
William, ladies and gentlemen, has the curse of Plassey hexing him, so I'll just leave it at that. You can ask him later what happened. I'll leave it at that.
Even though I'm 32, Chucky and I were in university together.
Is this working? Yes. So, dear friends who have taken time off from the lunch hour to be here, it's a special honor for me to be here, not least because of my rather shameful ignorance of history, which I hope will be corrected over this session. Unlike my distinguished co-director, William Dalrymple, in fact, I could exemplify the famed ahistorical Indian mind. All I know about the Battle of Plassey, before my friend Sudeep so perversely invited me to be at the launch of his book, was that the battle got its name from the village of Plassey, where the battle was fought, which was anglicized as Plassey, and that Plassey got its name from the palash flowers that blossomed there. Palashir is a red flowering tree we all know, known as the flame of the forest. This not always relevant detail got me over 1,000 likes on Twitter, the largest I've ever received for any comment. So we hope his book will have the same resonance and get him millions of copies sold, because it is a story that needs to be told with a unique understanding of many perspectives. The Battle of Plassey was fought on 23rd June 1757. It changed the course of Indian history. When the short, sharp hostilities between the forces of the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Daulah, and East India Company troops led by Robert Clive, the ambitious soldier of fortune, ended, Britain was on its way to becoming the dominant force of the region. So this was the moment at which this nation and this culture was poised when this decisive battle took place. I'm simply going to ask Sudeep some of the questions he has so provocatively posed in the blurb of his book. Please show the book as well, though we have it there. Here's the book. So these are the questions he was seeking to answer in this book. What was Plassey all about, besides a young Nawab who stood in the way of a company's business plans and a country's dreams of conquest? Was it really a battle, or was it one even before it began? So he is going to probe into this. He's also going to tell us the politics of the time that permitted Plassey to happen and the events to unfold in the way they did. And the third thing he's going to look at is why the British so desperately wanted Bengal. What was it so important about the situation, both cultural and geographical, of Bengal, that they wanted their footprint there? Over to you, Sudeep. I'd like to thank you for getting me to read and reflect upon such a pivotal moment in history with your thoughtful book. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to talk about the book. 10, 11, and then I want to get questions from the audience, because he's very keen to get your views, your perspectives, and your questions, more than views and perspectives, actually. Over.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And again, if you missed it earlier, let me say that there is a hex on William Dalrymple, the curse of Plassey, the next step up from the curse of Tutankhamun. And so be it. But I'm very happy that Namita Gokhale is here, deeply honored. Namita is a writer I admire, and William too, just for the record, even though he's not with us at this stage. He said he's close to death. He feels like he's close to death, so that was a Freudian slip. All right. Now, Namita is trying to provoke me, and I think I shall get provoked, but it will not be quite the anarchy that we'd hoped it would be. When I look at Plassey, what strikes me is, what really I wanted to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to go beyond the cliche of Plassey, if you will. You had sort of the crafty Clive, the traitorous Mir Jafar, and the poor old martyr Siraj-ud-Daulah, the young Nawab of Bengal, who is usually portrayed as much as the last free Nawab of Bengal, as the last Bengali Nawab, which is far from the same thing. So it needed to be an exploration that went beyond these cliches, if you will, these hoary truths or untruths or sold truths or partial truths. What I realized is actually there were many layers to Plassey, which I'm happy to have been able to peel away the layers from, which I hope some of you get to see and read and discuss, and we can talk about that subsequently. Is that a few things. One is that, and I will elaborate on it briefly, Clive was not quite the Lion of Bengal or the Lion of Britain that he was quite made out to be. In fact, as I detail in the book, he was really a nervous wreck. I mean, he would be repeated. He had a lot of bravado. He had a tremendous sense of self. He had a tremendous sense of vision, all of the above. But he took opium to calm his nerves. And the poor man did shoot himself. Not quite the poor man, the very wealthy man, but that's another story. Siraj-ud-Dowlah wasn't quite the callow Nawab that many people made him out to be, and at the absolute vicious sort of Caligula that he's made out to be, the man who, as Jean Law, the French resident of Qasim Bazar, which was a trading post near Murshidabad, wrote, and his is the most often quoted source for damning Siraj, is that he would actually pick people, men or women, and Siraj was bisexual, from what we understand. Sometimes he's called the ambidexter gentleman, which is a lovely way of putting it. Good for him. So, I mean, he would be indiscriminate as to whom he would pick up and take with him. According to these sources, he was a man who also drowned men, women, and children on the river when they were out on a boat for pleasure. So these are these sort of demonic Siraj narratives that have come down to us. I mean, he was an alcoholic for the longest time. He was quite the party animal, quite the man about town in Murshidabad and wherever. He was a spoiled brat, all true. And he did become Nawab at the age of 23. So maybe it happened to him very young. But Clive, at the Battle of Plassey, was also 32. So it wasn't really quite it's not all black and white. There are many grays in it. The other thing that I realized as I was sort of going deeper and deeper into Plassey is as to how close it was. For instance, there's a quip that I've been sharing with people like you when I talk about Plassey, is that it's quite possible that I would be up on stage this afternoon speaking to you in French, and maybe we could be having a conversation in French, and maybe I would have written the book in French as well, instead of English. It's about, in many ways, that's about how close the mechanics of Plassey was, because we forget that it was not just about the East India Company and the Nawab of Bengal, but the French East Indies Company was a key player in the Battle of Plassey as well, and in the run-up to the Battle of Plassey. Indeed, Robert Clive and Admiral Watson, who was an officer of the Royal Navy, and here I might digress to say, to break apart another myth of Plassey, that it was a company project and the government had nothing to do with it. It in fact was a company and crown project right through for the British, for the French company, for the Dutch company, for the Danish company, and so on and so forth. It was very much a compact of business and politics of the time. So these are I'm just throwing these little nuggets at you. Many of you would already know about it, but let me reiterate these points because we tend to forget these points. Now, how close was the battle? Let me read to you a small note that Robert Clive, Baron Plassey, I mean, that was the title that he was given thereafter, and a British peer and a parliamentarian described him as the heaven-sent general who brought Britain all these grand riches. And this is a note that as Robert Clive wrote to Mir Jafar, who was the sort of the chief co-conspirator who became the Nawab of Bengal after Siraj-ud-Dowlah. And this is a note written by Robert Clive, the Clive of India, to Mir Jafar, the next Nawab of Bengal, of the Plassey conspiracy fame. And this is written on the afternoon of 22nd of June, 1757, a day before the Battle of Plassey. And this is what Robert Clive writes to Mir Jafar. I am determined to risk everything on your account, though you will not exert yourself. I shall be on the other side of the river this evening, the Bhagirathi in this particular case. If you will join me at Plassey, I will march halfway to meet you, and then the whole Nabob's army will know I fight for you. Give me leave to call to your mind how much your own glory and safety depends upon it. Be assured, if you do this, you will be Subha of these provinces. But if you cannot go even this length to assist us, I call God to witness the fault is not mine. And I must desire your consent for concluding a peace with the Nabob. And what has passed between us will never be known. What can I say more than that I'm as desirous of your success and welfare as my own? This is Robert Clive writing to Mir Jafar about the Plassey project, as I call it, because it was indeed a project. Plassey was as much a business plan as a battle. And when we get to the question and answer and the interaction with you, ladies and gentlemen, I hope we can elaborate on that more. Let me add another little detail. Mir Jafar replied saying, don't worry, I'm with you. When we meet near the field of battle, you will realize that I stand with you. But of course, he took a long while to get there. Meanwhile, Robert Clive, who was not quite the calm and composed general that he's made out to be by subsequent hagiography, this is written in the evening of the 22nd after hearing from Mir Jafar, and some sources say that it was actually written a couple of hours before the battle actually began at 8 o'clock in the morning on 23rd of June, 1757, at which Clive continues to be the sort of desperate, whining individual who is absolutely frightened of overextending his ambition and sort of linking his own ambition. He's very aware at this point that if he goes down, he will probably take the company project down with him, and he might take down Great Britain's ambitions as well, along with this whole project. So he is, at this point of time, extremely insecure, very unsure of anybody's support, and hoping absolutely literally for divine intervention at some point. So he writes again to Mir Jafar. And again, he does this incredible thing by threatening his co-conspirator that he will make peace with Siraj-ud-Daulah. He says it again and again, which not many people realize actually how it went down. And he writes, whatever could be done by me, I have done. I can do no more. If you will come to Daudpur, which is a village north of Plassey, I will march from Plassey to meet you. But if you won't comply even with this, pardon me, I shall make it up with the Nabob. Now, this is Clive again to Mir Jafar. And I share this with you, ladies and gentlemen, because I just wanted to indicate to you, and Namita has read this, is to just how close it all was. That up until midway through the day on 23rd of June, there was absolutely no guarantee that the East India Company would carry the day. Because for a long, long time, the three generals who signed over to the East India Company, Rai Durlab, Yar Latif, and Mir Jafar, they were ranged northeast of the company forces in the famous mango grove of Plassey, the Tope of Plassey. And Robert Clive was, some sources say that he was absolutely high as a kite, or actually dull as a kite on opium, if you will, at that point of time. So exhausted that he fell asleep at one point at a crucial stage of the battle, and he had to be woken up by his sort of adjutant, who said, hello, we've got a break, we need to go forward. So these are sort of parts of Plassey law that one goes deeper into. And at one point, Clive actually thought that the battle was lost, because these three generals and the majority of the Bengal army that was ranged, supposed to be on his side, didn't move a muscle. So Clive didn't realize, he knew that they were not against him, but he wasn't sure that they were for him either. So, these are the things that interest me about how to peel away the layers of characters. Why was Siraj so reviled? Was Robert Clive really, who he was cut out to be? Was Mir Jafar really the person that, as traitorous as he made out to be? What about the great bankers of India, of the bankers to the world, the Jagat Seth, Madhav Rai, who bankrolled the project? Just how much did the French come into the picture? And just how critical was the French connection to all of Plassey, the run-up to Plassey, to the extent that Robert Clive and Admiral Watson made sure that they destroyed Chandanagar on the way to Murshidabad to get the French off the checkerboard of the British trade in Bengal, trading advantage and political advantage, and also to ensure that as they moved northward to Murshidabad and Plassey, they wouldn't have the French behind them, because then the French would trap them, because the French were evidently moving forces up from Pondicherry at that point of time on Siraj's express request. So there were a lot of these dynamics happening. The 7-year war had broken out. So Plassey was not really entirely a local battle. It was a business battle, and it had a grand element of geopolitics to it.
So I think it would be very useful if you could just map out, as you said, the politics of the time.
Yes.
For those who may, I can see lots of people listening intently and they know the whole story. Yes. But if you could give a backgrounder on the politics of the time.
Well, very, very quickly. And again, I wish my friend, the anarchist, was with us on stage. Don't tell him I said that. I need him to get well soon. So what really happened, and sort of a broad brushstroke, is that the Mughal Empire was in decline from really from 1707 on, after the death of Aurangzeb, and then it began to crumble. The Marathas, as we know, was the resurgent power at that point of time. In fact, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who I was in conversation with just 3 days ago. When I made that quip about French, he said, hey, we could be having this conversation in Marathi as well. The Marathas were so strong at that point of time. And they had the run of northern India, they had the run of western India, of course, central India, a lot of southern India, and right up to Bengal, to the extent that they'd snatched the Suba of Orissa from the joint Suba of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. They'd taken the control of Orissa from Alivardi Khan by treaty in 1741, Alivardi Khan being Siraj-ud-Dowlah's grandfather and the preceding Nawab. So you had the Mughal Empire in fracture, and you had these chieftaincies coming up, the Sikh chieftaincies. In Western UP, the Marathas were on a rampage at that point of time. So that was a slot. Meanwhile, the French were actually doing what the British did later in the Carnatic. They were, the Governor Dupleix from Pondicherry, based in Pondicherry, was reaching out to local rulers saying pretty much what the protection racket that Clive and the East India Company effected later on, Dupleix was effecting a protection racket for the rulers in the Carnatic, going to the Nawab of Arcot and saying, do you need help? I'm there for you, but, and I'll be with you again, so on and so forth. So, and the French actually fought a battle, the Battle of Mylapore, actually, with the Nawab of Arcot's forces, in which the French defeated, after capturing Fort St. George from the British, defeated the Nawab of Arcot's forces which came, and by which act established a template which the company forces and the young Robert Clive paid very close attention to, was that you could defeat the Moors, the Moorish forces of India, who until then had the run of the subcontinent. So in a way, the Battle of Mylapore or the Battle of San Tome, or the Battle of the Adyar, as it's also called, was in a way a prelude, a trailer to Plassey in many ways. And then you had Bengal, which was the richest province even in the crumbling Mughal Empire. You had silk, you had cottons, you had saltpeter, you had grain, you had lac, you had all kinds of things that Bengal was the center for. So it became quite the hub. Near Murshidabad, and not just in Calcutta, near Murshidabad, you had the Danes, you had the Dutch, you had the French, you had the British, who had set up their factories over there, and all along the Hooghly. And the British actually lucked out, because in retrospect, their outpost in Calcutta, was the southernmost of the outposts of all the European regimes. So basically, the British, the East India Company at Fort William and Calcutta, had a chokehold on the other European competitors. So when you choked the Hooghly/Bhagirathi near Kolkata, you basically choked everything. You could even choke the Nawab of Bengal's trade. You could choke everything that you wanted. So that was a sort of it played out brilliantly for the British thereafter. So that was really in a very, very broad brushstroke what was the sort of the political and, if you will, the geopolitical background, or the geo-economic background, if you will, to the Battle of Plassey. I hope that you will ask me questions to that, and I sincerely hope you do, because I think these are stories of history that we must query all the time. At a moment in time in my country and in the region where history is being rewritten with the most vile intent and the most cynical intent, and people are even calling that corrective history. To my mind, ladies and gentlemen, corrective history is when you correct a wrong, when you correct propaganda, when you correct an established sort of, if I may come up with a really poor pun, empirical history, if you will. You know what I mean. I mean, when you correct these narratives, these histories, to my mind, then it becomes corrective history, when there's a multiple narrative. So I hope that, you know, the little bit that I've tried to do, and with the interaction that we have now, and with what Namita has in mind for you, I hope we can get to the bottom of some stories, some layers of Plassey, which I think needs to be addressed again and again.
But before we open to the audience, I'm curious about one or two things. When you wrote this, when you researched it, when you finished writing it, when you reflected on it, what do you think were the lessons of the Battle of Plassey and of the accidents of history that led to it?
Well, it's 2020.
I don't know what the lessons are, but when you reflect, what
Well, the lessons are be young, be foolish, have a lot of opium, drink a lot of wine, womanize like hell, have great ambition, put on a bravura performance, overextend yourself, be overambitious. Money talks, money talks, money talks, money talks. Get a whole lot of concubines in the process. Never trust the French. Trust the British even less. And Siraj-ud-Daulah was not the last Bengali Nawab. He could be called the last free Nawab of Bengal if you extend that project to some degree. In fact, there is this lovely movie called Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah on YouTube, which has been funded by the government of Bangladesh as a sort of a corrective history project, if you will, because it needed to feed into the mythology of Bangladesh, which believes institutionally that life began in 1971 after the Bangladesh War. Now, this grand movie has this incredible scene. It begins with this Desi man who's pretending to be the Sahib, whipping this boatman on some random river in Bangladesh, no grand river, just a sort of a small river. And suddenly there is this, and he's whipping this man mercilessly. And he's saying, hum tumko maar dega kala admi, you know, the kind of a sort of the accent. And then, like Bollywood, suddenly this sort of black-clad arm reaches out, and that's Siraj-ud-Daulah who grasps the whip and says, and the camera pans to Siraj at that point of time, and he looks like Zorro. He's dressed in black. He's got a black pagri, he's got the Star of Islam, and he grabs the thing and yanks the Sahib, the company Sahib, who's actually played by a Bangladeshi actor, and said, "Chup rao byado, hum tumko dekhega, and hum tumko khatam karega." And then he sort of rescues these poor people, the Desis, and sort of rides across the paddies of Bangladesh on a white stallion. And that is Siraj too. So in my book, what I try to do, ladies and gentlemen, is not just look at the backstory to Plassey and the battle itself, but the layers and also living history. How does Plassey come to us in the present day? How do various people in the subcontinent and the UK, if you will, and France, see that seminal moment, if you will, in subcontinental history, which in some ways began, to my mind, the India project or the Orientalist project in the Indian subcontinent.
Don't you wish you had a history teacher like him? Big clap.
Thank you.
And over to the audience for some questions. I think the gentleman who's already got up, and then to the hand behind him so that we can save time. 4 questions is all that we have. 2 from this side, 2 from this side. Please introduce yourself, sir.
I'm A.L.
A
Agarwal.
brief question, no comments.
I'm A.L. Agarwal, Vice President, Haryana Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Chakravarti, you have rightly pointed out, don't trust the French, don't trust the British, and also don't trust the Chinese also. In 1962 war, we had a great setback. What precisely was the lacuna? Whether we were not prepared, whether our warfare was obsolete,
Okay, so that
or
is...
whether there was no political will. What precisely was the lacuna that we lost Chinese war in 1962?
I'm sorry, this question is not to do with his book.
No.
He can answer briefly.
Of course, it is away from the point, but regarding the
Well,
trust,
Yes,
To
but
come
the
back-
session is about his book. We
to
got
come
it,
back,
we'll answer it.
yes.
Should we say that don't trust the government of the day either, just to preempt where you were going with this? I got you there. You were coming to that Nehru number all over again. I knew that 1962. But here we are, sir, point well taken, but there are battles that were lost subsequent to 1962 as well. And if we look at the battle of demonetization or demonization and so on
I
and
think
so forth.
we are getting out of
so
the subject.
we are losing that
The
battle as
subject
well.
is, can we go there?
So 1757.
We are talking about the
this
Battle
is
of
about
Plassey.
how we lost the Battle of Plassey. And
Please, the
when I'm
question
saying
then.
we, I mean a grand we. Who won, who lost? I hope you get to read the book, sir. We can have an extended conversation after that.
Can
Thank
we
you.
have the next? Thank you, sir, for your question. You
Hello,
bet,
my name is Riaz, and my question is that 1,000 British troops, foreigners, with about 3,000-4,000 natives, were facing an army of 50,000 of Siraj-ud-Dawla. Of course, Clive had to be paranoid. He needed to find new methods of winning the war, and he turned out to be crafty. He brought divide and rule as his method of winning, and then subsequently, that is what has been prevailing throughout the British rule and even today. Divide and rule. What's wrong with it?
Well, for the British, nothing. They did marvelously on that account. So I don't know about what's wrong with, I mean, if you say what's wrong with divide and rule, as a card-carrying liberal who's also got a hashtag of urban exile, I will say do a big bleeding heart liberal thing and say it's a very bad thing. But if we go back to 260 years ago, then divide and rule was a strategy employed not just by the British East India Company, but anybody who had half a brain to leverage a particular project. It is a sad story that the aftermath of the Battle of Plassey and the aftermath of the British East India Company taking control of first the Mughal Empire and then of India, that we came to a sorry pass as we did. And we suffered greatly on that account, and I'm not even getting beyond the 2 famines at that point of time. But there was, I mean, for the British, it was a strategy, completely. To be fair to the British, and it's very difficult for me to say this after having gone through Plassey, the French were trying the same thing at court. The French were actually reaching out to similar people at the court of Murshidabad, in Siraj's court. And this was a game of advantage and disadvantage that happened several decades before Siraj became Nawab in April 1756. So divide and rule was pretty much the tactic and strategy and tactics of the day. You created alliances, you brokered alliances to the British East India Company's advantage and to their gain. You had the Murshidabad court already riven with intrigue, where Siraj, after becoming Nawab, actually fired the previous administration's key personnel, including Mir Jafar, who was a paymaster general of the army. There were other senior officers and officials who were fired or sort of diminished by Siraj. They were angry with Siraj. In fact, sir, Mir Jafar and one of Siraj's aunts, who has the moniker of Ghaseti Begum, actually reached out to Sirajuddaulla's cousin in Purnia, Shaukat Jung, to have Shaukat Jung come and battle Siraj, and they would actually back Shaukat Jung over Siraj, and the Jagat Seth, the banker of Bengal, equally reached out in that project. So even before the British got into the act of the Plassey conspiracy, you already had the anti-Siraj conspiracy out of Murshidabad. It was a living, breathing conspiracy against Siraj for the longest time, for close to a year. In fact, Siraj's aunt was against him from the time that he was declared heir apparent by Alivardi Khan in 1752. So, so the British walked into this grand moment of leverage, and they ran with it. So, it's not as black and white. I mean, we must consider the grays, and here we must wear our heart on our sleeves, but also use our head to our heart as well. We have to do both things. Otherwise, I'd be as guilty of corrective history as the people that I just dismissed.
Thank you. Time for one last question. Gentlemen, please get up, tell us. Katrina, 5 minutes?
I fully do not agree that Battle of Plassey changed the course of Indian history. It was a battle, not a battle as skirmish, laced with deceit by the English people. And it would not have lasted long had the Marathas not been decimated in the Battle of Panipat in 1761. And I feel that Battle of Panipat was the fiercest battle in the last millennium, which changed the course of Indian history. And because the Marathas' power reached right up to Bengal and the Bay of Bengal, from the Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal. So, had Marathas won the Battle of Panipat, then English victory would not have lasted long. And they would have been thrown out by the Marathas, the power they commanded. What I feel so. Do you agree with the same or not?
Well, not exactly, because, there are people who will also argue with me from this audience and outside, they're saying, no, the battle that changed the course of Indian history was the Battle of Buxar in 1764. And by the way, Plassey happened in 1757. The battle you described happened subsequently. Now, the thing is, the reason why I say that it's the battle that changed the course of Indian history is where the Crown and Company forces, in absolute alliance with a regional power, a very powerful part of India at that point of time, leaving aside the Marathas. The Marathas were as interested in Bengal as well, as you know. So they gained advantage in the battle, and the Battle of Plassey gave them strategic advantage. They gave them a toehold in eastern India. It gave the British East India Company and the Crown, because they were part of the loot, enormous riches. 2.5 million pounds as restitution just for the Battle of Plassey. 250,000 pounds to put Mir Qasim on the throne. Close to that amount to put Mir Jafar back on the throne. A £250,000 to put Mir Jafar's sons on the throne of Bengal. It was a revenue project, and so the reason why I say this is this started, in a way, a domino effect. Now, yes, you can say, what if? What if is a part of history? But the fact is that the Marathas didn't. In Plassey, the French and the Nawab of Bengal didn't. In the Battle of Buxar, the British did. So, the fact is that it started off a trend, if you will, a domino effect of dominance, of assurance, of confidence that we could do what we wanted to do. And hello, we have a CV, we have the curriculum vitae of Plassey to carry with us forward. So that is why I put it. So you can quibble, we can argue, saying, was it that battle or was it the other battle? You could say it was the Anglo-Maratha wars. You could say it was the Anglo-Sikh wars. You could say it was the Anglo-Nepali wars. You have hundreds of wars in the subcontinent. Tipu Sultan. So you can go on about which war exactly. But this is where it began. And that's why I say it. So we can talk later, perhaps, and I love this. Thank you very much.
So on that note, a very big clap for him. Please note the books will be available in the bookstore. Learn up on your history. The books are available for signing right now. Go for the signing.
Thank you very much.
Once again, our thanks go to Sudeep Chakravarti, and congratulations on the launch of Plassey, the battle that changed the course of Indian history. And as Namita just said, the book is on sale in the JCB Prize for Literature bookshop, managed by Full Circle. You will find the bookshop next to the Charbagh venue, to the left of Charbagh. You can pick up a copy of Plassey there and then meet Sudeep Chakravarti in the Z kiosk. He'll be signing here at the back of the Nexa front lawn in the Z kiosk. Please do pick up a copy of Plassey and he'll be happy to greet you there. Next up here on the Nexa front lawn in 10 minutes is the session Faiz and Faraq, the aesthetics and politics of poetry. That's in 10 minutes. And I'll just take this opportunity to notify you about the music performances tonight on the Jaipur music stage. The Jaipur music stage is by now an institution as part of the festival. It's held at Hotel Clark's Amir for 3 nights of the festival. Tonight is the final music stage evening. And we have 2 performances lined up for you. At 7 p.m. is Abha Hanjura, featuring Kashmiri folk ensemble. That's eclectic folk pop. Abha Hanjura is a popular folk fusion artist and frontwoman of the eclectic folk pop band Sophistication. Her music bridges traditional and modern sounds and has won her the HER Award, the Times Power Woman 2019 for Excellence in Music, and Best Folk Artist Award at the Hungama Artist Allowed Awards in 2018. The band will feature an ensemble of folk musicians from Kashmir and present a fusion of Kashmiri music blended with contemporary sounds. They will be playing from 7 till 8:15. Then at 8:30, the second band is Parvaz. Parvaz plays progressive rock. It's a contemporary Indian music band whose sound can best be described as a blend of progressive and psychedelic rock with elements of folk and world music. Rolling Stone India placed Parvaz on their cover and called them India's most exciting band. Parvaz has won a number of awards, and they are known for their energetic live gigs. So those 2 performances are back-to-back tonight from 7 p.m. at Hotel Clark's Amir. Tickets are on sale at the Circular Fountain at the entrance to Diggy Palace, and also at Hotel Clark's Amir itself this evening. Please do come and join us for this final evening of the Jaipur music stage.